Welcome to episode 21 of Motivating Mondays, a weekly podcast and YouTube series dedicated to helping Canadian job developers and other employer engagement professionals develop the tools, resources, expertise, and network to excel in achieving sustainable employment outcomes for their clients or students. My name is Christian St. Cyr, National Director of the Canadian Job Development Network, and today we're discussing a new report from the Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives examining our national efforts to support a $10 a day childcare program. Easy and cost-effective access to childcare not only improves the labor supply for the larger labor market, it also raises the working conditions for people doing the early childhood education. While universal childcare was an on-again, off-again promise of federal elections for decades, for several years now we've seen genuine progress in making this a reality. 5 years ago, most public places were shut down as Canada was plunged into the global COVID-19 pandemic. It quickly became obvious that smooth distribution of food and basics, functioning transportation, and access to healthcare were essential to basic well-being, public health, and the economy. And as most childcare services were shut down by public health authorities, it also became obvious that childcare to support parents to provide these goods and services was also essential. It took the pandemic to put the paradox of childcare in the 21st century in Canada in sharp relief, showing both the fragility of our childcare provision and how critical reliable childcare is to economic activity. This period powerfully demonstrates that childcare is not merely a nice-to-have. Parents working at essential jobs and those working from home both struggled to work without it. The pandemic years also highlighted pitfalls in Canada's long-term failure to tackle childcare problems by developing a public system, as many other OECD countries have been doing over the last 30 years. 5 years later, Canadian childcare has changed dramatically and substantively. Last month, the Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives published their latest report, which is titled, "The Price is Not Right, Yet $10 a day childcare Falling Short of Its Target." It notes the experience of pandemic-generated broad recognition that prosperity requires reliable, affordable childcare. The authors believe this paved the way for the federal government's decision to back an ambitious childcare plan, the first Canada-wide childcare initiative to move past intentions and into implementation. So what do we know about the $10 a day childcare plan and parent fees that go along with them? In 2021, the federal government announced the Canada-wide Early Learning and Childcare Program, the CWELCC, or as it's often referred to as the $10 a day plan, which would be backed by substantive multi-year funding. While British Columbia had been moving in this direction since 2017, and Quebec has had supports in place for decades, over that next year, all of the provinces and territories came on board, agreeing to collaborate, not all of them positively or with enthusiasm, but to collaborate with the federal government to transform Canada's childcare market into an early learning and childcare system. Every jurisdiction had signed onto the agreement by March of 2022, accompanied by the first round of action plans which were agreed to by the two levels of government. So the CWELCC was initiated by the federal government, and the responsibility for it is shared by multiple levels of government. Provinces and territories, as well as Indigenous governing bodies, have the main responsibility for implementing CWELCC, with the federal government providing much of the funding and high-level policy considerations, as it does with things like Medicare or housing or other social programs under provincial or territorial jurisdiction. The 2021 budget promised no less than a transformation of Canadian childcare, setting out a vision and a commitment to put a universal system in place for all, based on principles of affordability, accessibility, quality, flexibility, and inclusivity. These principles were integrated into the first Canada-wide childcare legislation, which was actually passed into law in March of 2024, a little bit more than a year ago. According to the CCPA, the federal government's overarching goal is to, and I quote, ensure all families have access to high-quality, affordable, and inclusive early learning and childcare no matter where they live. It is, and I quote again, a plan to drive economic growth, secure women's place in the workforce, and to give every child Canadian the same head start. Every Canadian child. Parent fees were the first barrier to be tackled under the CWELCC plan, with two initial fee targets. For the first target, the federal government required the provinces and territories to lower fees by 50% on average by December 2022, using 2019 as the baseline. The only exception to this was Ontario, which didn't sign on until 2022. So in Ontario, their baseline was 2020. The second target, above and beyond reducing childcare fees by 50%, was to reduce parental fees to an average of $10 per day by April 2026, which is less than a year away. So where are we here in the year 2025? Parent fees have dropped dramatically everywhere, and federal funds have replaced parental fees as the main revenue constituting childcare centers' budgets. Services have expanded. There's been an increase of about 150,000 licensed childcare spaces since 2019. The low wages and poor working conditions of the childcare workforce are a mainstay of Canada's traditional approach to childcare operation, have finally been acknowledged to be barriers to quality and expansion. Addressing these workforce issues have begun, but they're still a long ways from being solved. The CCPA has said in their 10th annual childcare survey that this is likely to be the last of its kind as Canada moves towards much lower set childcare fees. With the Canada-wide Early Learning and Childcare Plan, the CWELCC, the next fee reduction milestone, averaging $10 a day for all children aged 0 to 5, will be coming up in April 2026. Officials with the CCPA want to take stock of how close, really also, how far we are from parent fees in meeting that target. As in previous years, their survey had assessed progress in achieving affordable childcare for full-time licensed centers and regulated family childcare for infants, toddlers, and preschool children up to the age of and beginning kindergarten. The CCPA conducted a phone survey and gathered data on childcare fees in 37 Canadian cities, together with other variables including how fees have changed since the federal government introduced the CWELCC in 2021. Now, most jurisdictions have set fees, but we're not all at $10 a day yet. Childcare fee reductions for parents are now well underway in all provinces and territories. However, by April of 2026, many parents with children in CWELCC supported spaces will still be paying more than their $10 a day target. The federal government objective of an average of $10 a day is quite different than a maximum parental fee of $10 a day. Average does not provide transparency by a set or a capped fee. This means that some parents will continue to pay higher prices. The CCPA, the Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives, claims that they are most concerned by the lack of details on the final step down into April 2026 to even an average of $10 a day in Alberta, Nova Scotia, and British Columbia. This past July, there were no new additional details on how or if the fees in these provinces will change further from where they stood last year. So what are some of the pieces of information that we learned from this 2025 report? Well, 6 provinces and territories have already met or exceeded the CWELCC final target of a $10 a day child care program in advance of the April 2026 target. These include Nunavut, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, Quebec, Prince Edward Island, and Newfoundland and Labrador. 9 provinces and territories have already set fees. That includes the 6 $10 a day jurisdictions that I just mentioned, but also New Brunswick, Alberta, and Ontario, whose set fees are more than $10 a day. Additionally, British Columbia has a minority of spaces that are $10 a day. Provinces and territories still using market fees, but reducing them by a set amount are the Yukon, Northwest Territories, Nova Scotia, and British Columbia. Most BC spaces continue to use market fees. Generally, the higher childcare fees were to begin with the larger savings for parents brought about when the CWELCC fee reduction came into play. Smaller savings generally meant for meant the jurisdiction had a better public program before CWELCC came into play. The Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives argues it's in its final phase that CWELCC is going to have to work on a second, more difficult challenge to solve, meaning a higher demand for lower fees. This necessitates the rapid creation of more childcare spaces, but with equity in mind, to provide better access to what they call childcare deserts. Officials with the centre believe this requires a publicly led and funded expansion, much like we see in the K-12 system or in healthcare. Recruitment of early childhood educators is part of the picture, but so is the retention of current employees. Set fees are the answer to lower fees, but set wages via wage grids is more likely the key to staffing the expansion. Now, I believe that government can spend all the money it wants in making childcare more affordable. This will certainly increase the demand for childcare, but if there aren't enough childcare educators pursuing jobs in the sector, we will never have a truly universal system. British Columbia offers a $6 per hour early childhood educator wage enhancement for those working in eligible licensed childcare facilities. That brings the median wage for early childhood educators up to about $28 per hour, which makes it a far more attractive alternative for many job seekers. It's not to say this is the only solution, but in the final analysis, we need to not only make childhood education more affordable, but also more attractive to educators as well. For my part, I once thought we would never see a universal childcare program. I thought it was unaffordable, and while we're still in the incubator phase, I couldn't have been more wrong. I now see, to a much greater clarity, the value that universal childcare brings to the labor market as a whole. Supportive childcare for parents and caregivers who want to work is essential if we are about to enter into a multi-generational skills shortage. I believe that career development organizations, educators, government, and job developers themselves will play a critical role in helping develop this workforce, provide the necessary skills, and establish a well-funded, well-regulated sector. Just a heads up, next week, August 28th, is going to be your last day to register for developing a comprehensive approach to effective job development, the workshop, the online workshop. If you want to still benefit from the 20% discount on registration, we need to hear back from you by August 28th. If you or your colleagues haven't yet registered, just visit jobdevelopment.org/pro-D, where you can register and learn everything you need to know. We're also getting very close to our National Networking Day for Job Developers on September 19th. This is the last week to come on board if you want to host a session in your community. Let us know by this Wednesday, August 20th, if you'd like to host a session in your town or city. To learn more, just go to jobdevelopment.org/sponsors. Thank you so much for joining us. Please click on the like or subscribe button in your platform. Check us out wherever you download podcasts. We'd also love it if you could follow us on our YouTube channel and or rate or review this podcast. Now, we do these sessions live and for free on Microsoft Teams every Monday morning with job developers from across Canada, and it would be great if you could join us. Just go to jobdevelopment.org to learn more. If you have any questions, send us an email, info@jobdevelopment.org. Thank you so much for your time, and I hope you have an amazing week.